Welcome to another Cliff's List webinar interview. Tonight, my special guest is Stephen Shelley, also known as Stephen Nash, and originally known as Playboy LA, which is the name I met him at as when I stayed at the infamous Project Hollywood Mansion in beautiful downtown Sunset Drive or Sunset Boulevard in Beverly Hills, I guess it is.
Yeah,
And
the Hollywood Hills, the
and
infamous Hollywood Hills.
it's been, I guess, a lot of water under the bridge since then. But
It has, yeah.
Stephen is still helping guys improve their results and success with women. And I thought I would have a little chat with him, and I'm sure everybody here is going to enjoy what he has to say. Because from what I remember, he was had a special abilities from back then, and I'm sure they've improved since then. So, Steve, maybe you can give everybody a little bit of an introduction about yourself for those
Sure.
who aren't familiar with you.
Yeah, of course. Well, today I run a few businesses, and we can get into those maybe a little later. But one of the things I've done for a long time is work with men on improving their success with women and social skills and relationships, and particularly meeting the right woman or the right kinds of women for relationships for you. And that harkens a lot back to my own story, which I imagine we'll get into a little bit. But my beginning was quite a few years ago in the pickup world, and was a member of Project Hollywood, was in the game, experienced all that, and then created my own business in New York City, and that's been running for a long time. It's not my primary or full focus right now, but I still work a lot with guys. I still have a web presence, and I'm always happy to talk to folks like you. So I think that's a good little snapshot. And I'm married. I have a kid, and I should just say right here at the outset, you'll hear maybe a train in the background because we're we're in Southern California, in North County, San Diego, and so we're right by the train tracks, right on the beach, and it's wonderful. But every so often, you'll hear the surfliner go by, which is actually really nice. And I have a daughter who's 2.5 and just full steam, and you may hear her in the background as she's running around out there with her mom. So just a little heads up. But yeah, I'm married with a daughter, and I've never been happier. It's a beautiful life.
It's quite a big change from the Project Hollywood days.
Yeah, it sure is. It's been quite a journey. Yeah, it's 15 years ago. You realize that? I just sort of put that together. It's 2019, so that was 2004. I moved out there, and Neil picked me up at the airport in like mid-January, so it was around this time, 15 years ago, that whole thing started. And man, we were so God, it's like, it feels like decades ago. I mean, it was a decade and a half ago. It feels like much longer. But yeah, this is quite a change, and the growth curve has been pretty pronounced and very dramatic from those early days to now, no doubt.
Well, from what I remember back then, you were about probably the most successful of the pickup artists. I think that term is unfortunately gotten some negative connotations these days, but I think that that's a big misnomer because, in my mind, an artist is someone doing something that's artful, and generally, it's not a negative thing. It's something that, in order to be successful, you've got to please women in order to be successful. So in my mind, it should be a positive thing. But anyway, we don't need to get into semantics right now. I'm
Right.
more interested in, I guess, finding out a little bit more about how you used to do things back then,
Mm.
what's evolved, and let's start with back then. You were one of the most successful guys that I remember when I was staying at the mansion. You were uh, having quite good success with the women that you would go out and meet those evenings.
There were stretches in there where there was a lot of fun. I'll have to say, no doubt about it. Particularly early on, I can't remember when you visited. I remember seeing you in Montreal when we went there for a live event. That was also a lot of fun. But yeah, early on it was, I got into this, the whole world of pickup, and really studying social skills and how to be socially more intelligent and more attractive to women. And I explored Ross Jeffries and David D'Angelo, and then kind of really got drawn to Real Social Dynamics, which at the time had this. You probably remember this funny website where it was like they were diagramming football plays. It was like sort of like a football play in a club. You had like these people moving over here and these two going over here. Just remembering that. That's fun. But I took a couple of workshops with those guys, and and I think you mentioned the word artistry. I had a long history as a theater artist, still do that, and but I had done, just before I got into that, a lot of street theater. So I was doing pretty renegade stuff as a performer and an actor, and did a show off Broadway, and did some really interesting things. But I think that prepared me well for kind of what was to come at Project Hollywood specifically. Just kind of taking lines and words and these kinds of scripts and adapting them and making my own. And also the notion of talking to strangers wasn't that foreign to me, because we did a lot of very different out of the box stuff in this theater group I was a part of in New York. So I think that kind of gave me a leg up. I was also a little older, I think age helps. I wasn't, and now I'm much older, but at the time I was like 30, 31. Neil was the same age. Eric Mystery was also, we were all about the same age. And then many of the other guys, they were super young, like in their early 20s. And I think that age, that maturity, that experience that I had under my belt also helped me quite a bit. But there was a certain point about halfway through that time there where I was there for about almost 7 months. The Project Hollywood was kind of like, the original one was just like this big burst of fireworks in the sky. It was spectacular, and then it just sort of fizzled out. But about halfway through, what we were doing had become so robotic and so mechanical, and that my success actually dropped, because I wasn't aligned. I wasn't, the word we kept using at the time wasn't really congruent with these gimmicks, really. These lines and all these tactics and things was very, very scripted. This is a long time ago. I know things have changed a lot, but so my success and everybody's success sort of fell off, and so eventually, I moved back to New York, and my whole transition away from Project Hollywood back to New York is a whole story. Neil covers it a bit in the game, but I really sort of dropped all that stuff. I really kind of was exhausted with lines and with any sort of script at all, anything tactical, anything that wasn't really mine or authentically mine. I couldn't get with it. So eventually I became more and more natural, and became more and more about social skills rather than pre-scripted lines. Although sometimes a script is useful to kind of get somebody, it's hard to go from 0 to 100, so maybe get them out of the box, get them out of the starting gate, and kind of going forward is where I would use that. But I dropped all that stuff eventually. Particularly when I moved back to NYC, I just gave it up because it felt really inauthentic, and I knew there was a better way. I knew that real success lay behind all that. Real success lay in really knowing these skills as social skills, and kind of being really present in the moment was far more interesting to me than kind of being in my head thinking about what should I say next. So, but anyway, the first part of that time there was really, really fun, and then it got very serious. Everybody was in business, and there was a lot of guys in the house, and it sort of just became this descending vortex, and we don't need to get into that, but there was a time there where there was a lot of fun. One thing, I don't know if people know this, but the original intention of Project Hollywood, and this was a vision of Mysteries, I think, early on, that he involved Neil with, that eventually folded the rest of us into it, but I think they had the genesis of it. It was not to have anything to do with being a pickup artist or a PUA or anything related to what it became. It was really intended to be a lifestyle experiment where each person there would bring their unique gifts and talents and skills, and we would create a really vibrant, cool, socially dialed in, active lifestyle where people were just coming through the house all the time. Really cool people, culturally minded people, successful people we would meet. And it just never became that. But that was the original vision. It was supposed to be us working together, leveraging each other's skills, building a really, really powerful lifestyle that would then foster a really cool social circle. And then from there, we could have the kind of success that I began having later in New York City when I dropped all the kind of tactic stuff and just sort of moved away from looking more for physical interaction with women and more into like intimacy and relationships and that sort of thing. That was the original vision of Mysteries and Styles and Meals. And eventually it became like a couple of businesses, working in the house, and it became very competitive, and it just turned into something else. But my whole role was to be like an event planner and a promoter. And we did one party there, and it was huge. It was massive. and, and like, I don't know why, why we thought we'd be able to do this, but we had this big party and we had some celebrities there. Very like, what's like G-list celebrities. There was no A-list celebrities there. There were people we had seen in movies before. I was like, hey, did I see you in this film? Anyway, so but the place was packed. It was really fun. And the neighbors, I mean, you went to the house. It's right next to, it's in a very, very tightly created neighborhood. And so that was the last such event we had. But anyway, I wanted to share that because I don't know if people really realize that was what it was supposed to be, was this kind of lifestyle nexus, really, where we could kind of take things to another level.
Well, you brought up a couple of interesting points,
Yeah, sure.
a lot of which I kind of like to focus my interviews on practical advice for guys to help them with
Sure.
having more success. But I mean, can't help but veer off a little bit sometimes because I remember that the thing that distinguished, I think, the golden age of the community was how everyone was kind of working together, and there was this camaraderie and the spirit. And fortunately, I think my conventions reflected that. But I know that what has developed since then is kind of individuals sort of going their own way, and everybody's got their own directions, their own businesses, and instead of working together, everybody's kind of like aligned against each other in a way, because everybody's a competitor, and that's unfortunate. But that's, I think, where things moved for the most part. And from what I remember from Hollywood, actually Project Hollywood was also a big place where guys were training guys. There were I remember the bunk beds and the cramming all these guys in there for these boot camps and everything.
Yep.
And I guess first question that comes to my mind is like, how do you distinguish what? Maybe tell us a little bit about how you would have taken on a client back then compared to how you do them today.
Oh, wow. Huge difference. Well, at the time, it was very much a in-field focus. So what that means is like we would, I think if I can recount, I think the structure used to be, Friday night, meet these people for the first time. Or if I was doing a one-on-one, for example, I would meet the guy, kind of give him just some very simple things to start with. Then we go out and you can see a person where they're at, kind of where their skill set's at, what they're good at, and what they struggle with, what challenges they have, and how can I help this person. That sort of thing becomes clear. And then the next day, there's a lot of kind of workshop, seminar type things. And then at night, you would go out for a considerable period of time. This would be Saturday night, a late night. And then Sunday, the same thing, and maybe something in the early to late afternoon into the evening as well. And then that would be it. So that's, what is that, like 2.5 days, basically. Nowadays, what I do is it's often tailored to the person I'm working with, because everybody's sort of at a different place. But for example, I'm working with a guy now, and it's an 8-week program, and there's weekly kind of sessions, about an hour each week, where we go deep and we recap what's happened the week before, kind of pull things apart. And it gives me enough time to kind of download what I think is the next phase in his journey, or what he needs to focus on, where he needs to put his attention for that week. Give him a lot of things to do. And then there's a lot of back and forth in between. And so, but the focus earlier, back in the day, was very much about live, right here. Here's how you talk to somebody socially. And now it's really more about, there's a little bit of that. There's a little social skill training, but it's really more about getting really in tune with what you think. First step is like, what is your calling? That's my favorite question. What is your calling? And people aren't asked that. We don't ask each other that question, which is too bad, because that is probably the most important thing a person can know, or at least be interested in or open to. And then once you are clear about that in some way, you don't have to know it in its fullest expression yet, but just some concept of that, some anchor point, something to move you forward from. Then you can begin to cultivate a real lifestyle that is aligned with that, drop a lot of things, add some stuff, and then from there, a real social circle can begin to form. And that's when social skills, that's when a lot of social intelligence is really, really useful when you're building a social circle. You know, the pickup stuff and all that is something quite separate from what I'm doing now in terms of, you know, say this, don't say that. It's really more about, you know, building a social circle and creating and putting yourself in the middle of that. So you're the most, you're the guy who can literally walk up to somebody, say it's a party you're throwing or an event that you're hosting. And this doesn't have to be at the fanciest club in town. It can be at your best friend's apartment for all I care, you know, but like, it's so easy to meet people if you're the host of the party. You know, that's the best line there is. Are you guys having a good time? You know, like that's, you know, if you're the host of the party, like that's a really great question to ask somebody. There's obviously a huge amount of dimension to that we cover. And then after that, it's really about kind of putting this all into play and creating what I often refer to as like an attraction machine, which is a social circle and a lifestyle that's vibrant and empowered and that just kind of naturally of its own brings you interesting, aligned people that you can really match with, that you're really, really suited for. Whereas going out to bars and clubs and trying to kind of use scripts to pick up girls is it's a bit hit or miss. Whereas if you design this the way that I lay it out, typically what happens is you start meeting people that you have a lot in common with, that are really, really aligned with you and what you're about too. And it really, really fosters a meaningful life and a meaningful community, but also is the type of springboard into relationships that is super intuitive and very natural. So that would be my Cliff's Notes summary of both.
I guess the thing that strikes me when you said that was about the being the host of the party. Uh, I guess I've had some personal experience with this, but I think what I've seen from others is that often the host of the party or the guy who's running the dating club is the one who just can't get dates himself because you know, he's the host, and it's kind of a different role, and you know, transitioning that to you know, something personal is I mean, how do you advise guys to not just be the host, but to be someone that the people you meet become more personally involved with you?
Sure. Delegate, number one. So if you're the host of a party, you shouldn't be washing dishes, serving the food, being the DJ. I mean, there's a certain role you want to have. I consider the host to be the person who is ensuring that everybody is having an amazing time. And so you shouldn't be working. In other words, you should have those roles filled. But really, it's very simple. Like I think we may make too much of it. In other words, what I recommend is like if you meet somebody you're really interested in, and let's say you have 150 people at this party. That'd be a great party, right? And you talk to a few people here, you talk to a few people there, you mingle, you sort of work the room. Then you realize, I want to really talk to them more. I want to talk to her more. This guy feels like a guy I could do business with. You sort of identify like who in that room are really worth following up to. And then you have to be able to say no. That some people really struggle with that, and focus in on these relationships that you want to cultivate. But if it's a date that you want to follow up with, it's so easy to do. It's really just about, listen, I'm hosting this party. Everybody's having a great time. I really feel like I need to connect with more people, but I would really love a chance to talk more with you when I'm not so in host mode, when I can just be myself. And then we exchange phone numbers or emails or whatever we're doing, and then follow up from there. So it's really that simple. There doesn't need to be too much more to it than that. But I think the principal thing is to not be to be the host, but also to have help and to have a lot of people kind of doing the things that need to be done. Because your aim, if you're doing it in the kind of Stephen Shelley school, is to be able to be social. You want to grow your social circle. You want to meet people. You want to connect. You want to build community. You want to find people to have relationships with. Like, these are your aims. Your aim is not to be the cool DJ necessarily. So I would staff out as much as that as I could, and then make socializing my priority. And then if there's somebody that you really want to follow up with, it's actually very, very easy. Now, where people might get stuck, it's like, well, what if I want to continue things that night? And I rarely recommend doing that. I really do. There's no huge value add in that. If you're looking for a relationship, and those are the kind of guys that I work with. If that is your aim, like a relationship, like I want to meet somebody I can really have adventures with and travel and maybe raise a family, whatever your aims are, then there's no benefit to talking with her for hours and hours that night. What's of more benefit is to use the party for what it's for. Build your community, and, empower your social circle, make a lot of connections. If there are people there you want to follow up with, it's so easy. You just say, listen, I would love to talk more, but I'm in host mode here and I got to mingle some more, but can we connect on at another time? It's really that simple.
In terms of, I guess, things that hold guys back, being in host mode, I think, is one sort of thing. It's really a mindset, but
Yeah,
I think one of the things that I like to kind of ask about in these interviews is, um, how do you coach guys who have specific, I guess, sticking points and issues? For example, either they consider themselves unattractive or they consider themselves shy, or from what you've said, it sounds like you just focus on trying to get them to develop these social skills, but I think a lot of the inner game that they talk about is something that a lot of these guys have a hard time getting past in order to be social.
sure. Well, the biggest thing I see, the chronic habit that always surfaces, and it may appear as being shy, it may appear as feeling unattractive. And I'll be honest with you, most guys show up. I'll tell a guy when he's going to come work with me, say, listen, I want you to dress up like you're going to the hottest party in town. All right. Now, don't wear a tuxedo. You know what I mean? Like, dress like you're going out to meet. You're going to have a great date with a girl. You know there's going to be cute girls at this party. You need to dress like you look your best. So, and I'm telling you, 8 out of 10 times the guys show up and they all look the same. And I think really one of the big problems is that men feel caged, and our lifestyles these days, the way we're taught to live and be, and the programming of all these facets of life that people sort of feel stuck in, is an indication that people feel powerless. And so what we see often with guys who show up and want to work and is there's this chronic outsourcing of validation, chronic giving away of power. And we're taught to do that in our society. Everything teaches us to do that, more or less. And it really shows up so painfully clearly in interactions with women, because for most men, that's where it's most on the line, that and business, right? So the antidote is actually very simple, though not maybe like lights on, lights off. It's maybe not like a quick thing, but it doesn't have to take forever. But it's to really kind of understand why you're giving away your power. And the reason you're giving away your power is because no one has taught you how to simply feel good in spite of what's happening in your life. No one has taught you or me or anybody really that we can be happy first. We don't need outcomes to tell us how to feel. That's the biggest thing that has to be reversed. So I have to realize that I create my reality, and what's happening out there is merely an indication to me of my state. And so if I want things to improve, I have to get aligned. I have to get aligned. I have to get aligned. And that is the first thing. You have to take back that power over feeling good. Like if I need a business deal to go well, or I need some girl to respond to my text by 10 o'clock tonight, otherwise I'm not going to feel good, then I have a much bigger problem than when she calls, when she texts me back, or what happens with this business deal, right? So I have to learn how to do that. And that's often 80% of the challenge, because this chronic outsourcing of power, like this desperation, this neediness, and women smell it on us like bad cologne, okay? I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with women where it boils down to this nugget, which is I felt like the guy was too into me, like he needed me too badly. He was desperate, and there's nothing less attractive than that. So what we have to do is find this compass, and I call it your calling. I used to call it your mission, your purpose. When I came back from Project Hollywood, a friend of mine in the New York City community recommended David Deda's Way of the Superior Man. I recommend that book to men these days. I haven't read it in a while, but it's really, really good. But he talks about like men are here to men feel most joyful, most tuned in, most content, most peaceful when they're pursuing something, when there's something bigger calling them forward. So I use the word calling, like, what are you really about? And can you give yourself to that? Can you align your life with that? And so what happens is, once I do that, this font of energy is released, and I'm suddenly lit up, and I'm less dependent on all of these outcomes to turn out the way that I need them to so that I can feel good. Rather, I just feel good. And I'm actually serving in my outcomes. Like when I play party host and I'm aligned, I'm tuned into my calling. I'm really serious. Like, are you guys having a good time? I want you to have a good time. It's not a line. It's not a gimmick. It's not an entry point. It's just, I really want to know. And so this has to be transformed. This has to change. Nothing really that you lay on top of this urgent need for validation that so many men have can fix it. And that's why you see people doing this for a long, long time, not having success or just flaming out of relationships over and over and over again, because they just have no idea how to get aligned, how to live in that place, and how to prefer that, how to feel good first, and then go talk to that girl, and then build your social life, and then go on the date or do the online dating, whatever that is. You know what I mean? So that is the biggest problem. So a guy may be shy, but if he's chronically shy, like I've had guys come and work with me that just are terrified of talking to women. Well, the reason they're terrified to talk to women is because they need that outcome to be good so badly that they're unwilling to risk it. They've turned her into a monster and they're unwilling to risk it. So if I can teach you how to just get tuned into what is really matters to you, like, and that you have complete governance over that, your life is about something else, and you're talking to her is as much a privilege for her as it is for you, right? And suddenly this distortion can rearrange itself. It can relax, it can resolve. And then suddenly if I'm shy, because I used to be very shy. I learned how to not be shy, but it really started with getting clear on like, wait a second, I'm about so much more than her liking me in this moment. And that's the first key. That's the biggest thing by far across the board. What is your calling? Feel that. Don't just know it up here, but feel it as a state. That's the most important thing. And literally most everything kind of dissolves after that. Yeah, there's some stuff that comes up then, and not to minimize things that happened way back. You know, I'm working with some guys right now. They're all this stuff is coming up for them about, you know, the way their parents treated them and all that. And mind you, I'm not a therapist, but I can comment on that stuff with some objectivity and guidance, particularly as relates to relationships with women. So that stuff does come up sometimes too, but like chronic shyness and things like that, or I feel unattractive. Usually that means that I have outsourced my power, my well-being. I've just lost sense of who I really am. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of guys show up to me and I'm like, you know what, you are kind of generic. I would never tell a guy he's unattractive, but I think we can improve your look. So there's some value in that too. Having an objective view, having somebody from the outside say, you know what, I wouldn't wear that ever again, number one. And I would do this, I would change this, I would start doing this. Like there's some value in that. But it really starts with like, who are you in the first place? And can we find something, some appearance, some look, as we used to call it, that aligns with that, that supports that, that confirms that, that really shows, that kind of corresponds to this energetic signature that you are. Can we find something that looks like that too, so that you really show up and you are dialed in, you're clear. And the word I keep saying I know is aligned, 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 but that's the key. Be sourceful and then talk to the girl.
I guess, you know, that kind of suggests, I think that and I'm sure that probably most of the guys that you meet are in this category, that they probably have enough social skills to sort of make these adjustments once they start to, you know, I guess, put aside the need for validation. But what about guys that really haven't had that social skill education, you know, and you know, I think that's a very difficult thing to overcome once you find yourself grown up and you're really behind the eight ball in terms of your basic social skills.
Sure. Well, there are some certain training wheels. I call it just lines and scripts and things like that, training wheels. Like, let me get you out of the seat, basically. And so there's numerous of those. But I frame them as training wheels because I want you to drop them as soon as possible. So the first step is to do what I was just talking about, like align with, like figure this out, like what are you really about? And suddenly the stakes socially can become more organized in a proper way. That like suddenly this is not as important as I used to think it was. And I can actually think on my feet. I can actually be in my body. I'm not freaking out. I'm not sweating profusely in front of this person. Like, let's get rid of that first. And also like, like building a social circle is a very organic process, and you sort of get trained along the way. So like one of the first things we do is like I ask a guy like, okay, so let's say your favorite band comes to town tonight, and that's U2. Could you fill those tickets right now? If you've got 3 hours to go to the show, could you fill those tickets? And if the answer is no, which very often it is, then we know we've got some social circle work to do. But by being with friends, like being out with friends, hanging out with female friends, talking at work, at your job, at wherever it is, be the chatty guy, like say hi to people on the street, say hi to people in cafes, just start having conversations. Will teach you so much more than reading something out of a book or even like learning a bunch of lines. Now, there are a few things that I tell guys to get them going. And there's like a really great introduction line. And I don't really advise guys to go, because again, most of the guys that come to me are looking for a relationship. I'm the How to Get a Girlfriend guy. It's in my book, but so I don't get guys who are looking to like just go out and pick up girls, like, and I actually just refer them elsewhere, because that's not really my thing anymore. But there are certain things that I tell guys to do, like if say you're in a park or in a cafe or in a bookstore, wherever it may be, if you're really like coming from a place of power and confidence and you're really dialed in, it often doesn't matter what you say, but that a guy may need he may need to see that before he believes it. So one of the kind of basic intro lines I'll give guys is to say, you're in a cafe and you see a girl across the way. You walk up to her and you say, "Excuse me, I noticed you from across the room, and I had to risk complete embarrassment to meet you. My name is Stephen." And so there's a few facets to that which I really like, that really often work really, really well. One is, "I noticed you," which doesn't say that you're digging her, that she's super beautiful or she's got amazing eyes or whatever thing you might want to say there. Just noticing you. What will always happen when you say that to her is that she'll say back, "What did you notice?" So just be ready to tell her that, and please be sure that it's not that she has amazing eyes or an incredible ass or whatever you maybe noticed. Go a little deeper. But I noticed you from across the room and had to risk complete embarrassment to meet you. So we call this pacing, where you pace the reality of the moment and you talk about like what the experience of this second is really like, which is probably embarrassing for her, maybe, if other people are there, and probably is for you too. So if you say it, you diffuse it. It just vanishes. And then you introduce yourself. You give her your name. She'll say, "My name is Valerie," or whatever her name is. "What did you notice?" So just be ready for that follow-up piece too. So there are lots of little things like that you can give somebody that's like a training wheel on a bike. But honestly, like the focus on routines and lines and things like that, they don't actually get you, I think, to that point where you're socially intelligent, to that point where you're ready for a relationship. And that's really the kind of arc that I lead guys through.
Let's take a step back for a second and tell me a little bit about your own transition. You'd mentioned at one point you were shy. What, for you personally, changed when that made you have the success that you were having with women at that back in originally?
Well, pain was part of it. I was just so sick and tired of relationships kind of ending on me, which happened a lot. I had a few relationships that I was really into, and then the girl just lost interest and went on about her way. I think theater for me was a real key, finding something that allowed me to get out of myself and unlock from myself and really be more just confident in front of people. Like you stand on stage in front of 300 or 400 people and you do a show, something happens there. It's maybe doesn't completely translate into your regular, normal, everyday life, but theater for me, acting was really good. So I'll often tell guys, like, take an acting class, take an improv class, take a public speaking class, just get used to talking in front of other people. That can be really, really helpful. Even if you have no interest in, acting or being an actor, or auditioning for things or what have you, like just do it for that reason alone. You'll be fun. You'll meet people. It's a really good time. And improv is even better because you're doing all that and you have to think on your feet. You have to be present. You have to do that in a moment. So really that kind of thing for me kind of unlocked that for me and showed me that I actually could be personable, that I could be social. And then I think too, having really good role models. I had a few friends at the time who I would hang out with, and they were really positive to me. They'd be like, "Stephen, you're a good looking guy, man. You ought to be able to have a really good girlfriend." And like, that really meant a lot, hearing it from a guy I looked up to, a good friend of mine, Robert, and another good friend of mine, Tom, and David too. Like, these guys were really, really integral. These role models who, they were in really good relationships, and they kind of took me under their wing and helped me through maybe a period of really, really kind of being shut down and then opening up and feeling more and more confident to the point where I could approach, I could approach in any situation. I think I proved that to myself. There's some stories there, just like, how did that even happen? But yet it just sort of built from like those initial steps of kind of cracking this open and realizing, like, wait a second, the story I'm telling myself that I'm shy is just a story. It's actually not true. And I'm proving it to myself right now. And what happened for me was, as I was acting or doing improv or whatever, I felt this new kind of energy in my body. There was a flow. I felt vibrant. I felt open. I felt connected. And that became more preferable than being kind of shut down and shy and quiet. So it's really important. Shy is a story, right? Shy is just a story that you're buying into. So just stop buying into it, and buy into a different story. And one way you can really encourage that and accelerate that is to take some classes where you're just putting conditions with other people. It's very controlled and safe, and everybody's there supporting you, where you can explore this more powerfully, like an acting class or an improv class.
You mentioned at one point that in your past relationships, the girl kind of lost interest. What do you think you do
Yeah.
different now that you learn to, I guess, maintain that interest? Obviously, you've been married for a while now, and
Right.
you've solved that issue. So, what do you think? Was it just a special connection, or is there something that you actually do that made a difference?
Well, it's really, I keep going, I've gone back to it now twice, but in the way the superior man, David Data, talks about, and this is really true, I've seen this to be the case, it's like, if your mission is your number one priority. So very often for men, their number one priority, whether they'll say it or not, is the woman or the girlfriend or getting the girlfriend or getting the girl to like me or getting her to text me back. Like, women is their number one priority, which, due to the actual mechanics of attraction, makes you unattractive. So one of the things about kind of being in business with this, which takes me back to that earlier point, I'll make this point and get back to your question, but when we were doing Project Hollywood, when it became a business and we were all about picking up girls and meeting girls and boom, 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 this is all we were doing. Suddenly, like, for most of us, like, the women thing became top. Like, we had to have success or we weren't going to get paid. We were going to get bad reviews, etc. And so what happened at that point was that the attraction mechanisms began to flip around. And suddenly I was unattractive because, like, I really needed you to like me because I've got like 6 guys around me here paying me a lot of money to pull this off. So anyway, but so it's really about aligning with like your mission or your calling. Like, what are you about? Like, maybe you're about freedom, maybe you're about creativity, maybe you're about, I don't know, travel, adventure, like anything. Like, what is it? Like, what do you want to do? If you can get more into that than anything else, and certainly more into that than getting some girl to like you or getting over the hump or whatever that may be, like getting validation, like suddenly the attraction equation becomes equalized and balanced. And then I'm just naturally more attractive. So one thing that I have learned is that if I know what I'm doing and I'm in charge of that, I can control how I feel. Literally, I can control how I feel at any second of any day, in spite of what's happening. Then the attraction, when it comes down to your question about like the longer term stuff, stays intact. It stays intact because I'm about my mission. I know what I'm doing, and the attraction balance can be equalized at that point. So what was happening before was I was having very little success. I was coming from scarcity, right? I mean, like, I would just, every so often I would meet some girl, and every so often they would be into me, and then I might get a date. You know what I mean? So it was very rare that that would happen. And so I'm coming from scarcity. I'm entering into the social sphere, and I'm having these interactions with women, and like 1 out of 20 might be interested in me. And then that, and so the desperation, the holding on, the clinging to it, because I just, oh my God, I may never meet somebody else again. Like that was so prevalent there, and that would kind of imbalance the attraction. So by getting confident, by having some experience, and by seeing that I can create attraction, I know how to do this. I can be social. I can be confident. Suddenly, the scarcity model flips, and like there's abundance. Like, no, I can meet people. Like, I really think it's important. Like, I don't mean to like poo-poo pickup here necessarily. I think people take it too long. They do it way too long. They sort of like it becomes too important. It should be just a facet of what your life is about. But like, you know, like the opportunity to learn these skills and to just know, like, I know if the shit hit the fan, it did 10 years ago, the shit hit the fan for me in another relationship. But lurking in the back of my mind, I thought, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. I know how to meet people. I know how to create this again. I know how to pick up women. I know how to talk to women. I know how to be attractive. I know all that stuff. So I'm fine. Like that is really important. So I often tell people, if you haven't been through a phase, like for me, it was a phase. It was about a 6 month, a year phase where I just went out and I met a lot of girls. I had a lot of fun, a lot of physical interaction, you know, like it was really, really fun. And then it stopped being fun. It was just like, oh man, I need something more than this, right? But I always tell guys, if they come to me, they don't have that kind of experience in their background. Like, you should think about doing that. Like, don't work with me. Go find somebody who's going to help you do that. Like, I got a lot out of it. It was, I got in, I learned a lot of stuff, and then I got out, which was very important too, and kind of moved on with my life, and that's really key. But if you haven't had that experience, then the chances of you coming from an abundant, kind of empowered background are less, I would imagine. Like many guys struggle with this lack. There's just lack. There's a scarcity of women. There's only a few women who would ever like me. Got to get over that. And this period of time, this pickup period of time, Project Hollywood, for me, just accelerated me through that very, very dramatically, very quickly, very powerfully.
Yeah, as I said, I remember you being one of the most successful guys over there. It kind of surprises me to hear that the success dropped down. I would have thought that you would have sort of consolidated your skills and just sort of escalated them rather than have them drop off.
Everybody's did. Everybody's skill dropped off. I mean, I don't know what other guys would say, but no one was having much success. I mean, Neil, I wouldn't include him in this, and maybe not even Eric a little bit, but Neil wasn't even doing any of this. He wasn't going out every night and picking up girls. Every so often he would go out, but he had his own thing. Like, he was a great model actually for all of us, because he was doing his thing. Like, I keep talking about my calling. He was doing it. He was writing a book. He was doing his music writing at the time. Like, he was not doing what I'm describing, you know, what the RSD guys, including me, were doing. And certainly Mystery, though Mystery to a lesser degree. Mystery had relationships and then didn't have them, which is well documented in the book, of course. But no, there's a certain point where it's like in economics, they call it diminishing returns. And that was the case. You know, I got to a certain skill set level, and then I stopped growing and instead became habituated to the lines and the tactics and the techniques that I had come to depend upon. And then it just really started to wither away. When that success was regenerated was when I dropped all of those tactics, when I dropped all the lines and just kind of trusted myself. Like, I know this stuff. Come on, I know this stuff. I know social skills. I know how to be social. I'm very natural on my feet. I'm quick. I can do this. And I dropped all the lines, and suddenly this natural ability came that was somewhat informed by all those experiences using lines and routines, but was also just sort of my own way of doing it. Like, if you're too dependent on techniques and tactics like that, you'll become robotic. I remember Neil wrote a seminal post years ago called "Are You a Social Robot?" And really, really kind of it caught people. It was really, really powerful, and he was really speaking to us, myself, and a few others, because we were just going out and doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, using the same lines and routines, the body language, and all the same stuff. And it just has a point where it just stops working because I know it's bullshit. You know, like it's no longer fresh for me. It's like, as an actor, sometimes you have to improvise. Like, you'll work on a show for a while and you're so habituated, you've got to drop it sometimes. What we used to do in theater was we just drop the script and just go through the play anyway. Just make it up as you go along. Just make it fresh again. And for me, my refreshing of this was dropping it all and kind of going back to something very, very natural.
You know, you remind me about Neil. I honestly can't remember if this was a story I heard or if I was actually there talking with these women. But there was one night. The way I remember it, I was there, but I'm not sure if it was just me recalling in a strange way. There was
Sure.
a group of women there, and I guess one of the things that I kind of asked was, I said, "Look, you know, this is kind of like for women. This is kind of like the Victoria's Secret uh, Central, as if you know these are all very successful guys with women. So I would compare this to a guy being in the middle of a Victoria's Secret model convention sort of thing. And I don't think any of them understood what I had in mind there, but that's beside the point.
Right.
But the point was, if you remember, there were a number of quite attractive men in the Project Hollywood mansion. There was Natural J. There was an old Jeff who's gone from RSD a long time now. There was
Yes.
yourself. There was Mystery. A lot of these guys were very good-looking guys,
Yeah.
and I asked these girls, I mean, which of these guys was, did you find the most attractive? And every one of them, without exception, said it was Neil.
Yeah.
And which, surprised, the hell out of me. I mean, here's this guy who's like short, bald, big nose, scrawny, and yet they all found him as the sexiest guy of them all. I don't
That's
know if
right.
that sounds familiar to you or not.
Totally. Yeah. I wouldn't dispute that at all. I don't know if that actually did happen. I don't remember that, but it sounds right. Yeah. I mean, being attractive is so much more than your physicality. I mean, his way and his confidence and his security with himself. Like, he was very self-secure. He was validated. He didn't need anybody to like him necessarily. And so of course people really did like him. He was very, very confident. I think his work helped him with that. There was a lot of status that he carried. But yeah, and he had like a really interesting life. Like, and I think this is a real teaching point. Like he had a real interesting life. He had his version of that, but he did something very unique. He's doing something very unique. He's giving himself to a really creative path. And this is something that I learned from him in many ways, and some others too. So I've really endeavored to do things differently and be kind of go off the mainstream path, like stop doing the same thing everybody else is doing. And so that was like a real component to him. Like he would tell stories that weren't something he read online, but that were actually from his life, that were really interesting and that were really cool and different. And he had a unique way of looking at things. And I think he still does. So that doesn't surprise me, but I really think it comes down to that. Like he was more attractive and interesting than the others because he was more he was just living a more interesting life, and anybody can do that. And it really starts with like deciding like what you want to do, like how you want to do it, and then go doing that, collecting these experiences like he had done. And so that doesn't surprise me, because the rest of us were like in our heads the whole time trying to figure out what the hell to say next. He was just sort of having fun. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. I could totally see that happening.
I think that I think guys would want me to ask this question, but the guys there were all sort of had their own styles, their own approaches, and their own, I guess, way that they did things.
Sure.
What, just scratch your memory here. Maybe you can run through some of the guys who were staying there and like what stood out to you about them that maybe in some way gave you some insight into how you dealt with women, since it was such a major subject of what you were doing there.
Yeah. Geez. Well, let's see. Well, the cast of characters, at least during my time there, were the five of us who actually paid rent, which has a certain credibility. Me, Neil, Tynan, Nick, and Eric. We were the ones who were supposed to be living there. Me and Tynan and Neil were the only ones with cars. So we all just, particularly Tynan and I, just gave rides to everybody. But so, as soon as I got there, I remember I arrived and Neil gave me the tour of the house and Eric was there, and he just pulled me aside and and I don't know if he still does this, but he just downloaded his current model. Just sit in the corner. So he said, just sit here. I'm gonna tell you what I'm working on. And like 2 hours later, I had heard all the M5s and the A4s, and you probably remember all that. I don't know what he's doing now, but it was pretty amazing. There's a lot of really great stories from that time that to me are really really sweet, and so much of what came through the book is unfortunate maybe, but there were some moments and some really cool things that happened there that were also there along with all this other stuff that was going on. And I remember one night we were all going out, and Mystery was like just in a groove, like he was just really really doing it. And so we challenged him. So he had he had these New Balance shoes. They were really, I don't know why he had these shoes. He had huge feet, 6'6" or whatever he is, but he had these white, really just kind of old dude New Balance shoes. Said, all right, we want you to go out in a gray T-shirt. There's like basically his pajamas plus those white New Balance tennis shoes, and see what you got. So we were all in a workshop. It was all 10 of us, plus all these clients. There's probably 40 guys walking down that hill to the Sunset Strip, and there's Mystery. Like he's going to note his hair's just loose, and he's got those white tennis shoes on. I'm telling you, that guy killed it that night. It was amazing to watch him. Like he just didn't care. Like, and I think like yeah, he to see the singularity of focus he had. I tend to think now that was actually perhaps coming from a distorted place, like just a very imbalanced place, but he was just consumed by it, trying to unlock the code, the key to generate this on a consistent, ongoing basis. But yeah, there were some really cool guys there. Mike, the friend of mine, he was known as Sick Boy at the time. He and I were friends for a long time in New York. We actually worked together in Cutting Edge Image Consultants, our business. And he and I remained good friends a long time. Barry Kirky and I went to a Dodgers game. That was a lot of fun. And a lot of the guys that really helped out with RSD were really sweet guys. There were I guess they were called the Mini Papas at the time. I was Randy and another young Asian kid. They were really nice, cool kids. There was a lot of really, really great people there. And I had a great connection with Nick and Owen too. I haven't talked to them in a very long time, but Nick, I always felt really comfortable with, and Owen was just probably one of the smartest people I've ever met. I know you know him well, and I know you might agree with that. Like he's a very, very intelligent guy, and learned a lot from him about certainly social dynamics, but also just being single-minded and really focused and purposeful. And like that was what he was about. I don't think he's about that specifically now. I think he's about something bigger than that, or at least I would hope so. But at the time, he was very much about like Mystery, like cracking this code and thinking of it as like a math problem you have to solve. And I think they both have kind of grown past that and realized like it's more than just that. But the focus, the clarity, the determination, the will that he had was pretty amazing. And just so smart. The two of those guys, Eric and Owen, just so smart. Like very, very impressive. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
Some more, you must have some more stories. It sounded like you had a whole bunch of flashbacks there for a minute. What other stories do you have that maybe you picked up some good tips about things that help have success with women? From what you saw either Mystery doing or some of these other guys. I mean, one thing I did want to mention for those who probably aren't familiar, Tynan was herbal.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think a lot of the guys may not connect that so much. He kind of dropped off the scene quite a while ago now, but he was a very fun guy. I remember there was a lot of competition between him and Mystery over some women, and that was pretty funny because he was pretty short next to Mystery, so it was like the David and Goliath kind of situation.
Yeah, it sure was. Yeah. Tynan was I think I don't know why he was there. I think he had I think he had a real interest in learning and improving with women, but I also think he liked the idea of it. I think he liked how, oh, this is interesting. This is different. Like his whole life since then, I don't know if you've kept up with him, but he's a fascinating guy. Really, really interesting. He and I are still friends. Really, really interesting guy. He owns an island in Nova Scotia. He's lived in an RV for a number of years in San Francisco, like just doing things differently constantly and really thinking outside the box. And he's helped a lot of people kind of do that themselves too. Gosh, Cliff, I don't know, man. I mean, I have a lot of stories, but I don't know if they're any good, for for the purposes of an interview. Like, like traveling, and like it was kind of an amazing thing to travel to all these different places and do these workshops. I can remember, actually, I was thinking the other day about Montreal, the time we went there and meeting that guy Toe Cutter. I don't know if you're still in touch with him or remember him, but he was a really interesting guy. I would love to get connected with him if so, because he and I really got along. We had done a lot. We had seen a lot. Like I had multiple careers before my time as at Project Hollywood, traveling the world with a dance company, being an actor, doing all kinds of different things, directing pieces, all kinds of things. And he had his own life too. And we were like just people really chewing on the world in the same kind of way. He was really interesting. Yeah. So that, I mean, there was that. And I don't think that was in Montreal. That was one of our programs we gave, or was it? No, it was Montreal. Yeah. I didn't go to Toronto. Yeah, well, I mean, there were times where we did some pretty insane things. I mean, that's for sure. There was a period of time there, and this article never came out. This is maybe something I could share. There was a guy for Rolling Stone who was following me and Owen around, and he and I hit it off. We became really good friends. And the article never appeared because he got pulled onto another project, and then it just sort of faded away. But it was supposed to be about mainly about RSD and Owen specifically, and then about his team and what we were doing. So he followed us around for a few weeks, and we gave him every pointer in the book. But every night, it'd be sort of the end of the night, and everybody would kind of look at Owen and myself, because we were a team at the time, and say, "All right, show us what you got," sort of thing, And the pressure was extreme, because you got a Rolling Stone writer there, like chronicling this apparently unfortunately or fortunately, the article never came out. Who knows what he would have said, right? But there was one night where he and a few of our clients were like, "All right, we want to see what you guys can do." We want to see what you guys do, which is a very fair request given the nature of the affair. So we were at some club, and anyway, like everybody was leaving, and it's like, what are we gonna do? Like, God, there's nobody here. And we saw two young ladies, out on the balcony, and we approached them, and like I just will never forget seeing Owen climb over a fence. We had to get to them because the fence. It was, if you could see it, you would understand why. But we had to climb over this fence to get to them. And Owen is like, the gear at that time were those high-heeled shoes. It was insane, like these platform shoes, and like all kinds of weird stuff, and just like it's very hard to kind of be mobile and climb over this fence, but he did it. And we eventually got them, and we talked to them, and we got to the restaurant. We venue changed them, as we called it at the time, to a diner at the base of, just at the bottom of the hill from where the house was. And so the whole strategy during this time was meet them at the bar or club or whatever it is, and then get them to the house. Like, the house is not where anything's gonna happen. It's like Dean Martin's old mansion. We got the pillow pit. We're watching movies. There's a pool. It's in the Hollywood Hills that overlooks the ocean. I mean, you can see forever. It's like this amazing place. Like, we would just sell it and be like, "Oh my God, I gotta see it. It's right there." You can't believe it. I mean, we can literally see it from the clubs, right? It's right there. And so, so we went to this diner, and we put the girls down in a booth, and I think we ran to the restroom. We came back, and there were two big guys sitting with them in this booth. And the very next booth next to them was the Rolling Stone writer and our clients. We're like, "Oh my God, we're going to have to go full blast battle mode here in the middle of this diner, right in front of a writer for the Rolling Stone." And no one knows this, of course, but everybody's going to be watching it, because what we proceeded to do doesn't happen in social situations really ever. So we sat down at the counter, and we sort of regrouped, and Owen, and I don't know why he did this, but he did it. He said, "You have to go in." So I went up and I approached this booth, and there were these two guys there. And I wish I could tell you the exact exchange we had. I can't possibly remember. But I distracted them long enough, and I got I kind of rekindled the interest that the women had in me and Owen and I. And I said some things to the guys that kind of diffused their power socially in the moment. Meanwhile, I can see, like, literally, I'm here. and the Rolling Stone writer's right here, turning and watching this from like 2 feet away. And so at that time, like those guys are there, and so Owen comes up from the back, he starts talking to his girl, and before you knew it, we had pulled them out of the booth, and we exited the restaurant, and we left that area, and we went back up to the house, and that was the most incredible kind of reversal that I have ever experienced, quite like that, certainly socially. And I have to give credit to Owen. I have no idea if he'll hear this. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but he was the one who believed that we could pull this off. And like I'm telling you, probably 80 to 100 people watched that happen in that restaurant. You could almost hear like forks hitting the table. You know what I mean? Just people stopping and saying, "What is going on?" Because there was this moment happening at a booth right in the middle of the damn place. And sure enough, we pulled that off.
This was Mel's Diner, right?
Yeah, Mel's Diner, exactly. Yeah, right there on Sunset Boulevard. It's probably still there. But yeah, we were there practically every day. But that was like at the beginning of our time there, and yeah, that was probably the most intense social moment that I experienced. There were some celebrity moments later on, but that one was the one that sort of had the most stakes because that writer was sitting there and watching this whole thing unfold. And like basically, there's no hiding. You've either got it in that moment or you don't. Unfortunately, we did.
Well, that's a good little story. I guess it would have been curious to know what it was you think that turned them, away
Humor.
from these other guys.
It was humor. I do remember walking up and sort of detecting that these guys were playing it really low key. And so I just flipped it entirely 180 degrees differently. I went really amped. And I think we had probably created some kind of humorous memes or humorous kind of callback things that we could kind of refer to in that moment. And I imagine that's what I did. Again, this has been a long time ago, to kind of just regenerate that ladder of attraction, of interest, of like, just remind them like the fun's over here, basically. It was kind of the message. And it just sort of came right back. I mean, and those guys playing it low key got really caught off guard because that's not the kind of thing people do, what we did. So you don't expect that to happen. So we had the element of surprise, and we had a little, we had created enough rapport, not attraction, I guess, and that we could kind of rekindle really quickly and get them away from there. And then as we walk back up the hill, we're kind of getting back into the normal place where we would have been in the restaurant had those guys not moved in, so to speak.
Let me shift gears a little bit on you. In the beginning, you mentioned how you help guys find the right woman. Maybe you can go into some detail about finding the right woman.
Well, so the trick is that you don't know who she is, where she is, what she's doing right now. You don't really know that. The woman I'm with, who I love dearly and madly in love with her. Today's our 9-year first date anniversary, by the way. We've been married for almost 6 years, but 9 years ago tonight, we went on our first date.
Congratulations.
Thank you. For like, a year before that, I couldn't have told you where she was or what she was doing. I would have no idea how to go orchestrate meeting her. So what I had to do was get really clear on what I was about and build that lifestyle, build that social circle, and really, really get aligned so that everything I was doing, all my activities, all of my relationships, all my friends, everything that I was involved in was aligned with that, was true to that, felt right. Like I was doing it for the right reasons. There was no machinations, manipulation. I wasn't doing it to hopefully get something from somebody. I was there because I wanted to be there. I liked being there. It served me. I was of service. Like I was there for all the right reasons, right? And that comes from really kind of being clued into what you're about. And so you can build from like, this is my calling. My calling's about helping people with this. And then if that's the case, then I can kind of build a lifestyle according to that. And if I'm doing things that are really aligned and I'm aligned with this kind of central axis of what I'm about, then the right kind of people are going to float into my sphere. I'm just going to meet them, or I'm going to be so, like when you're really dialed in and you're clear on what you're about, then if you feel excited or drawn to meet somebody, you should do that. And that's when social skills come in handy. But in the case of my wife, like we met through mutual friends, like we met through a social circle, we met through the design that's a very organic design, very naturally. Like we were, I had friends, she had friends, and these groups started mingling and getting together, and I just was immediately drawn to her, very interested, and it sort of took off from there. And then, the universe, fate, whatever you think of it, intervened. And I just ran into her in some random part of town in Manhattan, just outside of Bloomingdale's. And I had no business being there, and she didn't either. We just happened to be there at the same time. But those are the kinds of things that happen, those synchronicities, those coincidences, when you're clear on what you're doing. Like, this is what I'm about. I'm not trying to orchestrate anything. It's just being orchestrated for me because I'm living true. Like, I'm following what feels good. I'm following my excitement. So meeting the right kinds of women means basically becoming the right version of you. And I know that sounds a little cheesy maybe, but it's true. It really means becoming the best, highest, most aligned, most purposeful, most driven, clearest version of yourself. And if you get that dialed in, you're going to meet people who really, really resonate with that. None of the interactions that take place, none of the things you're doing, the activities you're involved in are going to be arbitrary or random or wrong. It's going to be right. And the people you meet along the way will be right too. So it's really about kind of controlling all of that stuff, getting all that stuff dialed in, and then trusting that that's going to lead to whom you're supposed to meet. And very usually, once a person is really in that space of like really being aligned, it happens very fast.
The thing that sort of strikes me when I listen to that is that, often when you meet someone who's special, or even someone you're just very attracted to, uh, your what you say and what you do is often off. You're sort of off guard. You're not expecting. You're off balance, and you may have your act together as long as you're sort of not under that kind of a stressful situation there, where all of a sudden you've got someone in front of you that matters. And how do you deal with that? Is there something like, here it is, you're kind of figuring out how to meet these special people, and yet, once you meet them, now you've got to be yourself, as they say, and that's
Well,
kind of a difficult thing.
it can be. I mean, there's training for that. There's tools for that. And the best one is to understand how to manage your state. So one thing I talk a lot about is being a state snob. Like, just refuse to feel bad. Like, just don't do it. And if you find yourself in the undertow of feeling bad for any reason, look at that and give yourself a tool. So there's all kinds of tools. Like, who feels better before they go to the gym or after they go to the gym? People feel better after they go to the gym. Like, you feel your energy's up, you feel open, you feel like, the energy's flowing. Like, that's a great example. I'm not saying go to the gym all the time and then go meet women, but that confirms that if you do certain things, your state will change. So one of the things Tony Robbins actually talks a lot about, which is really, really helpful, is managing your physiology, like your body. And so how many times have I been out with guys, watching them, consulting them, helping them, and I see them go up to, talk to a woman, and their posture will go like this, they just be kind of collapse in on themselves. Like, well, if you don't do that, the state that comes with this posture, like kind of crouched over and sort of afraid, is not going to come into you. You can literally manage your physiology in order to govern your own state. That's a great tool. Another one is the pictures you create in your mind. Like, if I'm going to go talk to, say, some young lady across this cafe, and as I'm approaching her, I am creating a movie in my mind whereby she creates a scene. She says, "What the hell are you talking to me for?" She drops her food, or she pours her coffee over my face, whatever it may be, right? I create some horror film about me approaching her. Well, I'm not going to do so well, right? I'm not going to be in a great state for that. But if I see her like open and receptive and excited and say, "Oh, this guy looks like a cool guy, I'd like to talk to him," she doesn't have to fall over backwards to give me her phone number necessarily. But what if she were just like really open and like kind and generous and warm? Like, if I play that movie, like, I'm going to be far more likely to be in a good state when I get there, and therefore create that kind of interaction. So there are tools we can give you to help you manage your state. That's the key. So that when these moments come up, And the more aligned, the more clear you are about your lifestyle, what you're doing, they're going to come up more and more and more and more and more. Like the people you meet are going to be super relevant. Then you will have all sorts of tools to bring yourself back into alignment, to bring yourself back into alignment. But the biggest one is that you'll get shaken less easily because you're clear on why you're there. You're clear on what you're about. You feel validated first. You feel good first, right? So you're less likely to be kind of wobbly in the first place. But otherwise, there's all kinds of tools you can use to kind of just bring your state back in. So one thing I do when I work with guys is sort of try to access kind of how they talk to themselves, how they form pictures for themselves, how their state might get out of alignment. And let's just use those same paradigms, if you will, to get them back into alignment. I think the other thing I'll say is this, is that I think many of us kind of concoct this false narrative that we have to be like super smooth and super dialed in. Otherwise, this isn't going to go so well. Like I took that bait for a long time, and that's just not the case. Like, it's not important that you be perfect. It's not important. It's not imperative that you nail it. It's not imperative that you say everything perfectly. It's not imperative that you don't blush or whatever may happen, right? It's actually not that big of a deal. In fact, for a lot of females, it's very attractive to see a guy who's a little vulnerable or even a little uneasy or shaky. What is key is that you then know, you accept that right away. Like, you don't defeat yourself, you don't beat yourself up, you don't criticize yourself. It doesn't become a bigger deal than it is. And you just gently pull your state back in. You gently pull your perspective back in. Say, that's funny. Like, what if you just laughed at yourself? Like, that's a very sexy and attractive attribute. So there's two sides of it. One is managing your state. The other one is knowing that, like, the hoop you have to jump through here is wider than you think. So you don't have to be perfect. So just try to be somewhere in the middle of that, and everything is fine. The final thing I'll say is that if I'm supposed to be with somebody, and this has been my experience, as it was with Teresa and with others too, is like, if something's supposed to transpire here between me and this person, and this could be business, it could be a friend, it could be a date, what have you, like, there's very little I can do to stop it. And the more and more I believe in that, the more and more that becomes self-evident, because I'm relaxed, I'm able to let that sort of happen. What happens for most men, a lot of men who really struggle with this, is that they create these awful, awful movies in their mind, and they never actually give themselves the chance to go out and learn the basic skills for socializing, for interacting with people, because they're so terrified. And that's the first thing we have to kind of dismantle, is to say, like, wait a second here. As Owen used to say, give him credit. He used to say, we're not dismantling roadside bombs here, boys. This is not, we're not performing open heart surgery on anybody here tonight. So let's relax, let's have fun. And, I keep coming up with stuff, forgive me, but like, one of the great things that I used to do was, like, if I had a friend who was into this, like, I had a few friends in New York for years who were also into this, I'd go out with them and we'd go out together, and we would just have fun with each other. Like, Mike and I just had a lot of fun with each other. This fella Joe and I used to have a lot of fun with each other in New York City. And so meeting people off of a nucleus of you just hanging out, having fun with a friend, is so much easier. Like, don't go out alone. Don't let that stop you if that's the only alternative you have. But if there's a friend that you want to be with, you like being with it, you can support each other. You can talk to each other. You're not the awkward guy standing there with no one to talk to, holding your drink, looking like a stiff, right? No one wants to be that. But if you have a friend you can go out with and can talk to, it's so much easier to kind of turn this party of two into a party of four, into a party of six, etc. So that's one little very easy little hack or tip that I think guys could use. Find a friend, go out with a friend, have fun with a friend, and off of that, it's very, very much easier to socialize than if you're on your own.
Well, I think you've given a lot of good insights into, I guess it's the overall mindset that makes the difference here. It's that once you kind of let go of things like, the issues that may be standing in your way, and just sort of focus in on being a right kind of social person, that sort of solves all of the issues for you. You just behave in a more appealing and attractive way because you're natural. And
Pretty much. Yeah. It's sort of like, be yourself. I mean, that's very general bad advice 8 out of 10 times. But when I say it, what I'm saying is be your real self, be your highest self, be your most excited, most expanded, most vibrant self. Like really tune into that. Become that guy. Like become that guy. Like become that guy who sees solutions. Become that guy who's convinced he can be successful. Become that guy who knows he can create what he wants in his life. Become that guy who's an adventurer, who sees everything as just fun and joy. Like anybody can become that guy. It's just a perspective that we can adopt. If you can adopt that perspective, a lot of the detail, a lot of these issues just fade away. People are drawn to people who are really clear and tuned in and really know what they're doing. That's the self to be. Be yourself means to be that guy. If you can be that guy, you'll have no problems.
Well, I want to, I guess, thank you for taking all this time with me this evening. It's
Yeah, sure.
been a good little uh, 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 sort of
A little reminiscing. Yeah,
jaunt
yeah,
down memory lane here. Maybe you can
yeah, for
tell
sure.
the people listening and watching about what they could do to follow up with you in terms of if you're offering coaching, any products,
Sure,
events. Just tell them a
sure,
little bit
sure.
about what where they can go from here.
Well, if you're specifically interested in the dating side of things, lifestyle-arts.com, lifestyle-arts.com. It's all there, /coaching. There's a little form there I ask you to fill out just to be sure we're kind of starting off on the right foot. But what that does, you fill out that form if you're interested in working with me, and then we'll create a quick chat sometime soon after that, where I promise I'll give you value, but we'll be sure at the end of that whether or not you're right for what I offer, and vice versa. So that's there if you want coaching, specifically dating coaching for me. I love doing it. I've got some guys I'm working with now where we're just blasting them off. It's super, super fun, like really, really radically changing stuff. It's really cool. And then my wife and I have a business called OwnStream, which is uh, different but not. It's really about kind of taking anybody through a dramatic path of transformation, identifying your calling, revisioning a life from the standpoint of that calling, doing something big and impactful that changes things forever, an irrevocable kind of act, what we call a burn the boats moment. Could be quitting your job, could be getting out of a relationship that's not working, or what have you, something big, 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 and then create a life anew based on that. It's a bit involved. That's very general, but that's ownstream.co. And Teresa and I do that work together, and that's really fun. Right now, we got a coaching program where we're leading some people through that process, and it's big, 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 big shifts and transformations. And we're actually about to come out with a new product too. I don't know when this will run, but sometime into the month of January, we're coming out with a product, a video course training of that OwnStream package, what we call Exit the Matrix. It's pretty cool. Yeah, those are the big two things right now. I have a whole theater project I'm working on too for Los Angeles. That's called The Great Awakening. You can learn more about that at greatawakening.co. But for the kinds of stuff we were talking about here, lifestyle-arts.com, that's how you can kind of get in touch with me about dating stuff. And there's an ebook there, How to Get a Girlfriend. Sold thousands of those. I think it's helped a lot of people. It's really, really good, really clear. There's a lot of kind of specific tools and techniques to use in there too, but it really talks a lot about the importance of being clear on your purpose or your calling, and kind of how that goes from there in terms of having really, really durable, lasting dating success, like really transforming things. And then there's an audio product too called Natural Attraction. That's for sale too on the website. Anyway, that's enough. But lifestyle-arts.com for all the dating stuff. And connect with me on Facebook, Stephen Shelley, my real name, my former name, Stephen Nash, my other former name, Playboy LA, my other former name, Playboy. There's a few names out there, but Nash or Shelley will get you to me.
Well, that's great. I look again. I want to thank you for taking the time with me this evening,
Yeah, a lot of fun, man. A lot of fun, Cliff. Thanks.
and I think the guys are going to really enjoy this, and
Cool.
I'll be looking forward to everybody who's watching this making some good comments about it.
Sweet. Yeah, I'll be happy to respond to questions or whatever comes up. No doubt.
Sounds great. Well, I'm
Sweet.
going to say good night, and we'll talk again soon.
All right. Thank you, Cliff.